At 2 a.m., his phone lit up beside me. I wasn't looking for secrets, but the message on that screen didn't just wake me up, it ended my marriage. It started with something so small, it almost didn't deserve attention, a sound she had heard 1,000 times before. A soft vibration against the wooden table. Not loud, not urgent, just a quiet tremor in the middle of the night. The kind that usually disappears into sleep without leaving a mark. But that night she was already awake. Rain tapped gently against the window, and the ceiling fan turned slowly, cutting the silence into steady circles. Her husband slept beside her, breathing evenly, one arm resting across the pillow where her head had been minutes earlier. She had woken from no particular dream, just a feeling, the strange alertness that sometimes visits at 2 a.m. when the world is too still. The phone vibrated again. She didn't look at it immediately. For years she had trusted him without effort. Their life was ordinary in the comfortable way people secretly hope for: shared meals, small arguments about nothing, laughter over television shows neither of them finished watching. Trust had never been a decision. It had been the background of their marriage, like air. But something about the timing felt wrong. He never received messages this late. Not from work, not from family. And he was a light sleeper. Usually even a notification would make him shift or open his eyes halfway. Tonight he didn't move at all. The screen glowed once more on the table across the room, a brief flash of white in the darkness. She tried to ignore it. She closed her eyes, counted breaths, turned onto her other side. The phone vibrated a third time. Curiosity is rarely loud. It doesn't shout, it whispers logic. Maybe it's important. Maybe someone needs help. Maybe he forgot to silence it. She sat up slowly so the mattress wouldn't move. The air felt colder than it should have. She walked barefoot across the floor, each step careful, not wanting to wake him over something that was probably nothing. When she picked up the phone, she intended only to silence it. That was all. The screen lit in her hand before she pressed anything. A single notification waited at the top. No name, just a heart emoji, and 3 words. "Are you awake?" She frowned. Perhaps a wrong number. She almost set the phone back down. Then another message appeared beneath it, immediately, like someone watching the screen on the other side. "I miss you tonight." Her fingers tightened slightly around the edges of the phone. Not panic. Not yet. The mind always searches for the simplest explanation first. Maybe a friend playing a joke. Maybe an old contact he forgot to delete. Maybe. The typing bubble appeared again. She didn't realize she had stopped breathing until her chest hurt. "She's sleeping, right?" The room changed. Nothing had physically moved, the furniture was the same. The rain still tapping the window. The man she loved still resting peacefully behind her, but reality tilted quietly, like a picture frame nudged off center. She looked back at him. His face was calm, familiar, safe. The same face she had trusted through years of ordinary days. The thought that this message belonged to him felt impossible, and yet the phone was warm in her hand, unlocked with the fingerprint she had used countless times to answer his calls while he drove. Her thumb hovered over the screen. There is a moment in every life where you understand that once you know, you cannot unknow. A door exists only until it is opened. After that, it becomes a memory. She could put the phone down. She could return to bed. Morning would arrive exactly the same. Or she could read. Her heart beat louder than the rain. Slowly, she opened the conversation. The messages loaded instantly, not weeks old, not forgotten history, buried deep, but recent. Continuous. Intimate in a way conversations only become after time has softened hesitation. Plans discussed. Jokes shared. Nights counted. And then she saw it. A photo sent earlier that evening. Not inappropriate, not dramatic, just a picture of the restaurant they had visited together last month, taken from a different angle. A memory she thought belonged to them now existed somewhere else too. Her vision blurred for a second. But she didn't cry. Shock rarely allows tears immediately. It creates stillness first, a quiet, hollow space where understanding gathers slowly, painfully. Behind her, he shifted in his sleep. She locked the phone and placed it back exactly where it had been. Her hands were steady. Too steady. She lay down beside him again, staring at the ceiling while the fan turned above. The same ceiling she had watched on countless nights. Tonight it felt unfamiliar, as if she were visiting someone else's life. The phone did not vibrate again. Morning would come soon. He would wake, stretch, ask what she wanted for breakfast. The day would attempt normalcy. But she now carried something irreversible, not proof alone, but awareness. The marriage had not shattered loudly. It had cracked silently at 2:07 a.m., in the glow of a screen. Morning arrived the way it always did, gently, almost politely, sunlight pressing through the curtains as if it didn't want to disturb anyone. The world outside continued perfectly normal. Distant traffic. A neighbor sweeping the front step. A kettle beginning to whistle in someone else's kitchen. Nothing had changed. Except everything had. She had not slept. Not even for a moment. She kept her eyes closed when his alarm rang, pretending the rhythm of her breathing belonged to dreams. She felt him sit up beside her, stretch, and silence the phone, the same phone that had turned the night into a question she could never unask. "Still sleepy?" he murmured softly, brushing her shoulder. She nodded slightly, careful to keep her voice absent. If she spoke, the tremor inside her chest might escape. She needed time not to understand what she had seen, but to understand what she would become after knowing it. He walked into the kitchen. Familiar sounds followed. Cupboard opening, cups touching the counter. The quiet routine of a life built on repetition. These sounds had once comforted her. Today they felt rehearsed. Like a play she had already watched from backstage. She sat up slowly. Her eyes drifted toward the bedside table. The phone lay there, face down now. That was new. He never placed it face down before. A detail so small someone else might never notice, but when trust fractures, the mind becomes an archivist, cataloging every inconsistency. Every movement carried meaning now, whether it deserved it or not. She stepped into the kitchen, and he smiled exactly the way he always did. Warm, casual, ordinary. "Tea or coffee?" he asked. She stared at him for a second longer than usual. Not accusing, not emotional. Just observing, like looking at a familiar photograph and realizing there was something hidden in the background you had never noticed before. "Tea," she replied quietly. He nodded, turning back to the stove. Steam rose between them, thin and temporary, yet it felt symbolic, something warm but impossible to hold. They sat together at the table. He talked about work, a colleague's mistake, traffic on the highway, everyday things people discuss when life is stable. She listened, responding at the right moments, but inside she was comparing two realities, the man speaking to her now, and the messages glowing in the dark hours earlier. Which one was true? Or were both? Trust doesn't disappear in a single instant. It dissolves in layers. Even after proof, the heart searches for mercy, for an explanation that can return the past intact. She waited for him to mention the late-night messages. He didn't. Not a pause. Not a hesitation. He drank his tea and checked the news on television while his phone remained silent beside him. Too silent. Almost carefully silent. Her chest tightened, not from anger, but from something heavier. Recognition. Silence can lie louder than words. "Did you sleep well?" he asked casually. The question hung in the air. She could answer truthfully and shatter the morning. Or she could protect the fragile normalcy for a few more hours. "Yes," she said. The lie felt strange on her tongue. Their marriage had survived years because honesty was effortless between them. Now she tasted what distance felt like, not measured in miles, but in withheld truths. He finished breakfast and reached for his phone. Her heartbeat quickened involuntarily. He glanced at the screen quickly, too quickly, then locked it and slipped it into his pocket. No message sound had played. But he checked it anyway. Habit. Or expectation. In that moment she understood something painful. She was no longer part of his instinctive world. Someone else occupied that unseen space, the space where thoughts travel before words. He leaned down and kissed her forehead before leaving. "See you in the evening." The door closed softly behind him, and the house finally exhaled. She stood still for a long time, staring at the empty chair across the table. The silence after departure is different from the silence at night. Night hides things. Daylight reveals the absence. Her eyes moved to the sink, the cups they had used minutes ago, the ordinary evidence of a shared life. Nothing had broken physically, yet something essential had shifted beyond repair. She walked back to the bedroom. The bed remained half warm where he had slept. She sat there slowly, her hand resting on the sheet, remembering how many mornings had started exactly the same way. How many of them had been real? How many had existed beside a secret she never sensed? Tears finally came, not dramatic, not loud, just quiet lines she didn't bother to wipe away. The pain was not only betrayal, it was realization. She had discovered a second reality existing parallel to her own, and she had been the only one unaware of it. The marriage she believed was shared had contained a private room she was never invited into. On the bedside table lay nothing because he had taken the phone with him. And somehow that absence felt louder than any confession. She whispered to the empty room, not expecting an answer. When did we stop being enough? The house, faithful to truth, remained silent. All day she moved through the house like someone walking inside a memory. Every object carried history, the curtain they had chosen together, the mug he always reached for first, the chair he claimed as his, without ever saying so. Nothing looked broken, yet everything felt displaced, as if the meaning had quietly drained out of familiar shapes. She tried to distract herself. She folded laundry that didn't need folding, rearranged drawers already organized, made tea she didn't drink. But the mind, once open to doubt, refuses ordinary tasks. It keeps returning to the same point the moment at 2:07 a.m., when 3 words rearranged years of trust. By late afternoon, the silence inside the house grew heavier than the silence of night. Night had shock. Day had understanding. She knew she could not sleep beside him again, pretending ignorance. The waiting was worse than the truth. So she made a decision. She would not accuse. She would not shout. She would simply remove uncertainty. As sunset softened the sky, she sat at the dining table with his spare key beside her. Her hands were calm now, not steady from denial but from acceptance. Whatever she would discover next would end the guessing. When she heard the gate open, her heartbeat didn't race. It slowed. The door unlocked. He stepped inside, loosening his watch the way he always did after work. "You're awake," he smiled casually. "Long day." She looked at him, really looked, memorizing the ordinary comfort of his presence, because she sensed it might already belong to the past. "How was work?" she asked gently. He shrugged. "Same as usual. Same as usual." The phrase lingered in the air like a fragile lie neither of them touched. They ate dinner quietly. He talked. She listened. The television murmured in the background, but neither watched. Each moment stretched longer than it should, both aware of a conversation approaching but unwilling to begin it. Finally, she reached across the table. "Can I see your phone?" The question landed softly. Yet the entire room changed. He froze, not dramatically, just a fraction too long. A pause most people would never notice, but when truth waits beneath the surface, even half a second becomes loud. "Why?" he asked lightly. "No reason," she replied calmly. "I just want to see it." His smile tightened. "It's probably dead," he said, picking up his glass. "I didn't charge it." She didn't look away. "You checked it 3 times during dinner." Silence. The air thickened, heavy with the sound of everything unsaid. He set the glass down slowly. For a moment she thought he might laugh, dismiss it, pull her into reassurance. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes searching her face not for anger, but for how much she already knew. Her voice remained steady. "I'm not asking to fight," she said quietly. "I'm asking to stop guessing." The honesty of that sentence removed the last excuse. He reached into his pocket. For the first time since she had known him, the movement looked reluctant. He placed the phone on the table between them, not handing it directly, just letting it rest there, like an object neither owned anymore. She picked it up. Her fingers did not tremble. The screen unlocked instantly, and there it was, the same conversation from the night before, but now alive with new messages sent during the day. Casual, familiar, comfortable. A connection not hidden in panic, but maintained in routine. She read only a few lines. She didn't need more. Understanding doesn't require every detail, only enough to confirm what the heart already accepted. She placed the phone back on the table. No tears came this time. Instead, a deep quiet filled her chest, the kind that follows the end of uncertainty. "How long?" she asked softly. He didn't answer immediately. "Long enough." That silence was the confession. She nodded once, absorbing the final truth. The pain she expected didn't arrive dramatically. Instead, something else replaced it: clarity. Their marriage had not ended when she read the messages. It had ended the moment he chose to live a second life and still come home to the first. She stood and walked to the bedroom. He didn't stop her. Perhaps he understood that apologies belong to people who still share the same reality, and theirs had separated hours ago. She packed slowly, not out of anger but respect for what once existed. Each item folded carried memory: trips taken, evenings shared, quiet laughter before sleep. She wasn't erasing the past, she was acknowledging its end. When she returned to the living room, her bag rested lightly in her hand. He finally spoke, voice low. "Are you leaving tonight?" She met his eyes calmly. "I left last night," she replied. He had no answer to that. She walked toward the door, the same door they had crossed together countless times. This time the distance felt longer. Her hand paused on the handle for a brief second, not hesitation, but farewell. Then she stepped out. The night air felt colder, but clearer. Behind her, the house remained quiet, holding echoes of a life that had existed honestly until it didn't. The marriage hadn't been destroyed by anger. It had been undone by truth, glowing softly on a screen in the dark. The first night alone was quieter than she expected. Not peaceful, just empty. There is a difference. Silence inside a shared home carries warmth. Breathing in the next room, footsteps in the kitchen, the comfort of another presence even when you're not speaking. Silence alone carries echoes. It reminds you of what used to respond when you spoke aloud. She sat on the edge of her sister's guest bed, suitcase still half open, staring at her phone. Not his phone, her own. No missed calls. No apologies. No desperate messages. And that hurt more than anger ever could. Because it confirmed something final. He wasn't shocked by her leaving. He was relieved she had discovered the truth herself. Tears came then, not for the betrayal alone, but for the version of love she had believed in so completely. She cried for the mornings that would never repeat, for the inside jokes that now felt borrowed, for the trust that had once been effortless. But beneath the pain, something else quietly began forming. Clarity. The next morning, she woke before sunrise. For the first time in months, her chest didn't feel tight. The uncertainty was gone. There were no more questions to replay, no more notifications to fear. The worst part of betrayal isn't the truth, it's the waiting. And she was no longer waiting. Days passed. He called once, not to apologize fully, not to fight, but to explain. The explanation sounded tired, complicated, filled with phrases like "it just happened" and "it didn't mean anything." She listened calmly, because now she understood something he didn't. It always means something. Not because of love, not because of passion, but because of choice. Every message sent was a decision. Every lie maintained was effort. He hadn't destroyed the marriage in one dramatic act. He had dismantled it quietly, layer by layer, until she finally saw what remained. One evening, she walked past their old house, not to return, not to hesitate, just to confirm her strength. The lights were on. Life continued inside those walls. But she no longer felt attached to the space. She realized something profound. The marriage hadn't been destroyed the moment she checked his phone. It had been exposed. And exposure is painful only when we confuse illusion with reality. Weeks later, she signed the papers. No screaming. No courtroom drama. Just signatures on a line that marked the end of something that once felt permanent. Friends asked if she regretted looking at the phone. She surprised them with her answer. "No," she said softly. "I regret not listening to my instincts sooner." Because deep down, before the vibration, before the glowing screen, Before the three words that changed everything, there had been small signs: a slight distance, a new privacy, a subtle shift in presence. But love often teaches us to ignore discomfort in order to protect stability. She would never do that again. Months passed. Healing didn't arrive as a sudden transformation. It came in quiet realizations: cooking for herself without feeling lonely, sleeping through the night without waking in fear, laughing without wondering who else he was texting. One evening, while cleaning her inbox, she found an old photo of them at the beach. They looked genuinely happy. She didn't delete it immediately. Instead, she studied it carefully. The woman in the photo believed she was loved completely. That belief had been real in that moment, even if it wasn't permanent. She whispered gently to that past version of herself, "You didn't fail. You trusted. And trust is never weakness." Eventually, she deleted the photo. Not out of anger, but out of growth. The wife who checked his phone didn't destroy her marriage. She uncovered its truth. And in doing so, she saved herself from years of living beside someone who had already left emotionally. The real twist wasn't that their marriage ended. The real twist was this: the moment she chose truth over comfort, she stopped being a victim of betrayal and became the author of her own future. Late one night, months after everything, her phone vibrated. For a split second, her heart reacted the way it once did. But this time, she smiled calmly before picking it up. It was only a friend checking in. No secrets, no hidden lives, no shadows. She turned off the light and lay back, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Because sometimes destruction isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-respect.